Hey guys, it's Ross, and in today's video we're going to show you guys the garlic harvest. We're going to talk about what went right and what went wrong. About 2 weeks ago we actually harvested some garlic. It's been curing inside, so we're going to talk about the curing process, what the next step is after we got the garlic to actually this stage right here. We also did a video, by the way, on the garlic scapes. So for those of you guys who grow hardneck garlics, can get scapes. They're really tasty in the kitchen. We did a nice video on that a couple weeks ago. Before we get into all this harvest and curing stuff here and how that really came to be, I want to show you how the garlic really gets started because it's really simple, and I think a lot of you guys would be interested to know. Essentially, to get a bulb of garlic, you start out with a single clove. And what right here in my hand here is I harvested off of one of my bulbs a single clove. And this is pretty standard here. The larger the clove, the larger the bulb is going to be. You want to make sure that you're planting this at the right time. Here in my climate, we're going to go over this as well, but we had done a staggered planting back in here against the house, determining when is actually the best time to plant garlic here in my climate. You can obviously read this from the books, read this online. I think that's probably a good estimation, but you're not always going to find out the best date for your climate. For me here, because I'm colder, we have to plant our garlic in the fall to then be harvested the following year in the spring. If you guys live in a more mild place, you're probably going to be able to do this in the spring or even throughout the winter time. You can do this, you know, in California or Arizona. You can start your garlic in the wintertime and then harvest that stuff when the springtime comes around. You're really flexible and more flexible with that, but here in the northeast, you got to grow this stuff and plant it in the fall. And that's kind of what we do here, is we get ourselves a clove. We make sure that it's planted the right side up. You can see the bottom here. This is where the roots are going to form, and then the top, this is where the leaves come out of. We just stick this in the ground, push that in, and that's about it. You kind of want to cover the top, but you don't want to cover too much of the top. Leave that a little bit exposed, and that's going to grow into some garlic. It's going to honestly grow. If you do this here in the fall, the temperatures are going to be warm enough, believe it or not, to get that thing started, just enough to get it through the winter time. You don't want to get it started off too fast, because then the cold can come in here and kill the garlic. But you also don't want to have it just sitting there, because the bulb itself, or the clove itself, I'm sorry, can rot in the ground from too much water. So you want to have something that's somewhere in the middle, and that's kind of what you're looking for with your planting date, is trying to figure out what that nice happy medium is. And then now that it's June, today is June 9th, we have harvested our garlic. So planting this sometime around, for my climate, sometime in early October, even mid-October, I think is going to be the best time of the year to do this here in the Philadelphia area. And then by June 9th, because this stuff's actually based a lot off of the sunlight, the amount of sunlight hours, they're kind of day neutral in that way, and they're going to then trigger themselves into kind of dying off. And this is exactly just what happens. They put out their seed heads, they start getting these yellowing leaves here, and that's when it's time to really think about harvesting. Additionally, and I think what is more better and more accurate advice, if you look at the garlic plant, count the number of leaves on it. You want to have at least 6 green leaves. If you don't have 6 green leaves, I think you're going to pretty much run into some issues with storage. Now, we're going to talk about curing here in a minute, and storage as well, but essentially each leaf here represents a paper husk that goes around the garlic. And I could take off this leaf. If I could put you guys down here for a minute, I can show it to you. So if I take off this lower leaf here, this is then peeling off a layer off of the garlic. And each leaf, again, like I said, represents one layer. So the more layers that we have, roughly about 6 is really what we want. You can get away with 4, but this is going to eventually, inevitably get us and net us garlic that's going to be able to store well throughout the wintertime, because we're not just growing this to eat now, we're growing this to eat throughout the entire winter. And then that way I can also have garlic to plant this fall. So it's really important when you're doing this, you just have to make sure that when you harvest, one leading indicator, and this is what Ron L. England mentions in his book, How to Grow Great Garlic, is that you count the number of healthy leaves. If you leave the garlic, by the way, let's say we left this in the ground and all these leaves start to die back, we're running the risk of also getting rot because it's quite wet here, it's quite humid here, we're getting lots of rain. I've had a couple of these bulbs actually rot. I tossed them already, so I don't even have them to show you, but it's very likely, it's very possible, and that's not edible anymore. Not only is it not edible, but you can't store it. So, you know, we got to make sure that there's a nice happy medium. I can't be the one to tell you. You got to kind of eye this out for yourself, figure it out for yourself. When is it time exactly to harvest? And this is only going to really come to you with enough experience growing this, you know. In addition to also when to plant, when to harvest and when to plant, I think are really the trickiest things. Other than that, this is really as simple as sticking a clove in the soil, it turns into a bulb of garlic, you harvest, and you're pretty much done. You know, I think it's really simple in terms of different food crops you can grow here. Like, I would say a potato is pretty similar, right? You put a potato in the ground, it sends up these eyes sends up the shoots from the eyes, and then you come in here about 90 to 120 days later, and you've got yourself potatoes. You know, here's a really good example here. If I dig around, you can see the original potato right there. But if I dig around a little bit further, excuse my hand there, you can then see the first potato starting to form. So, you know, it's really that simple, is that you pretty much put a clove in the ground or you put a potato in the ground, and then you come in here at the right time and harvest these things, and that's really it. I mean, with garlic though, and I recommend that you get yourself a nice well-draining soil with a lot of organic material, and also give it a nice shot of organic fertilizer twice, when you plant it and also when the spring starts. It's really important to get ourselves large bulbs. And why is that so important? Well, you can see over here, these are some really small bulbs. These really didn't do all that well. I mean, not that they didn't do well, they just didn't have the energy to form a large bulb. Think about it, right? Here I have a variety called Chinese pink, and these are the largest of the bulbs that I've harvested. I actually have some Chinese pink inside that did a lot better than these, and we're gonna get into this whole situation right here. Hopefully I can get an idea of why this has happened. But these are certainly the larger bulbs. And why are they the largest bulbs? Well, one, we planted them at a different time. We planted them at the right time, sometime around mid-October. I think that's really the best planting date here. Additionally, the clove that we started out with was large. It was the biggest of the cloves. So the biggest clove is going to produce the biggest bulb. And that's what we need to do when we come in here next year, or in this fall actually, is that we need to save, once these are done curing, we need to save the largest bulbs for the next planting. Otherwise, we're gonna end up with something like this, and you're just not gonna be happy. And eventually, your garlic's gonna get smaller and smaller. If I were to plant, you know, a clove from this as an example, it probably would be even smaller next year. So, yeah, I think there's a lot of factors that goes into this, but certainly getting yourselves larger cloves is gonna net you larger bulbs. Now, what else can I talk about here? Let's talk about the curing process. So we showed you guys how to remove these lower leaves. And what I've been basically doing is that I would come in here to get these things nice and clean and spotless and ready to be cured, is that we've essentially peeled off the lower leaves, just like we did down here with this other piece of garlic when I put you guys down, is that you just come in here and peel off this lower leaf. That gets you a whole layer off. You don't have to wash it or anything. And then that way it's clean, it's ready to go, and it looks nice, and you can be ready to store it. Now, what I'm doing here is I'm actually putting them on the patio in the sunlight. Ideally, you probably don't want them in the sun for too long, But you can have them outside in a drier day. Definitely no rain. Just let them be outside in a dry day. Let them sit out here and kind of dry up a little bit. Once they've done that for about a day or two, you can then bag them up. And that's what I'm going to do is I'm going to put them in clusters like this. And we're going to bunch them up, put them into an organza bag. What's an organza bag? An organza bag, let me show you guys over here. Should have this with me. An organza bag is a mesh bag that has lots of airflow, lots of holes in it. It's going to essentially keep all the garlic together. It's a different way of doing this. You can see them right here. I use them for my strawberries. I wrap my peaches with them actually. I wrap my figs with them at some point here just to protect them from the birds, also to kind of help disguise them. But these are really nice for storing the garlic because they have great airflow, right? There's a lot of holes in this. It's a fine mesh. And what we can do is contain them in that, and instead of braiding them, that's what some people do, is they braid their garlic and then they hang up their garlic, you know, in a pretty much a room temperature place that also is dry. If you're storing this garlic, by the way, and you're curing this garlic in a humid, hot place, it's gonna be really bad. It's gonna start to rot. You may even increase your risk of botulism, so that's not good. You really wanna just make sure that you're storing this pretty much in the house, I think is a really good place for a lot of us. Not in the basement probably, because it may be more humid down there. Check the humidity, it should be somewhere around 20 to 40% in a room temperature environment, and this is gonna do well. I put on the ceiling fan in my room, and this is where this stuff goes, is that they go in the organza bags, I hang them up, and they sit there for about 3 weeks to a month, and they're pretty much done curing at that point. Then what I'll do is I'll come in here, and we can do a video on that as well, is we're gonna clip off all the roots, we're gonna cut the stems, and they're gonna look like bulbs of garlic that you'd buy at the store. So it's really this simple. And we can always do this every single year. That's the beauty of it, is that I can save the largest bulb here and just plant a clove from that and have plants and have garlic every single year. I don't have to go to the store and buy this stuff. It's really simple to grow. It's really simple to harvest. It's really simple to cure. You know, it's a no-brainer once you really get a handle on this and you really get doing this. So that's my advice. And let's talk about, I guess, the season we had so far. The season really was not too great for the garlic in terms of, we just had a lot of water. Like I was saying, we were getting a lot of rot. Once I started to see some rot on the tops of the bulbs, you can definitely see it on maybe the stem. You know, the stem starting to kind of get a different color to it. Really quite brown. That's when you know you're going to get some rot. It's really not good, like I said, in terms of storing them, because we are going to be storing these guys in the fridge, believe it or not, somewhere between 34 degrees, somewhere around that temperature, and actually they store at that temperature for the longest time. So if they are rotted, it's not going to work out. Now, what else happened here? Well, we planted a new variety this year called Music. Music is a really good standard for climates in the northern latitudes. This actually, I think, came out pretty good. This is about the size that I received from the nurseries. So to then have a bulb that not only is it the same size, but it's also the first year that you planted it, it didn't actually adapt. It didn't acclimate itself to the environment. I think it's pretty good. So this is, I would call some of these a success. Obviously, some of these look larger and smaller than others, but I like the Music. I think the Music did well. We have also some from New York Garlic Guy, and I forget exactly which ones of these are that one, but the one we got from him also did pretty well. But Chinese Pink, which was a soft neck garlic, this one did not do well. And I've been pretty upset about it because you can see they're the largest bulbs, but they have this like splitting in here. Maybe they needed a bit more time. Maybe it had something to do with how late I planted them. Some of them didn't get in the ground until the 15th of October. Some of them didn't get in until November 1st, which, believe it or not, I think is just too late. And the garlic didn't have time to rise up out of the ground and settle itself in. and really didn't sprout until around March, you know, very early in the spring. And I think that's a big factor in why this has happened here. This is not what you want to see, because this is not going to store well. This is just not going to do it. There's not enough layers on this, and not enough you know, amount of those papery husks on it to keep this stuff from drying out, or even just completely just not doing well in storage. And you can see they're all sort of like this. So this is not what I wanted to see, but here actually is one right here that made it and did pretty well. I have a couple of these like this. So we're gonna plant this variety again, assuming it's not the variety, but again, the Chinese pink I think was just very disappointing. I think here's another one right here, which does have the same problem, yeah. So they are the largest bulbs, but again, they're not gonna store well. So we'll see what happens with this. I have to do some more research on that issue. For those of you guys who know the answer to that, let me know down in the comments. But this was a pretty easy year, really. I think every year with garlic is going to be pretty simple. It's really just as simple as planting it in the ground and harvesting at the right time, and then curing this correctly, and you're pretty much good to go. So anyway, guys, I want to thank everyone for watching this video. If you enjoyed this, you want to see more on garlic, maybe we'll talk about storing them. Maybe we'll talk about, you know, the overall harvest when everything's said and done. Or we can talk about, at some point when the curing process is finished, what had happened, how everything went, etc. But yeah, I want to thank you guys for watching this one. Check us out on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter if you guys are interested for more different content over there, as well as check out the blog, right? The blog has different content, more longer form, rossraddy.wixsite.com/blog. All that is in the description of this video. And yeah, I got a lot of work to do, guys, so I'll catch you for tomorrow's video. Take care, everyone.